Welcome my colleagues and my dear students. Now we are discussing some statements about cell membrane transport. As I say every lecture, you have to study well the notes before beginning to solve MCQ problems. The first question, the diffusion of water across a semi-permeable membrane is termed active transport, diffusion, osmosis, endocytosis. The correct answer is osmosis, because osmosis is the passive flow of water across the cell membrane from areas of high water concentration towards low water concentration. As regard carrier mediated transport, all are true except we know well that carrier mediated transport involves at least two types, which are facilitated diffusion. The second is the active transport by its types, two types, which are primary active and secondary active. Which of the following is false about carrier mediated transport? It can be utilized by active transport or facilitated, can be uphill or downhill, energy is supplied directly or indirectly from ATP, it is not rate limited. It is utilized by active and facilitated diffusion, this is true. Uphill or downhill, uphill in active transport, downhill in facilitated diffusion. Energy can be utilized directly or indirectly, directly in primary active transport and indirectly in secondary active transport. It is not rate limited. This is false. It is rate limited. Any transport by carriers is rate limited and saturable. Which of the following best describes the process of diffusion? It is a downhill process, uphill process, a process by which only large molecular weight proteins move across the biological membrane, requires metabolic energy, depends on the balance by hydrostatic and oncotic pressure forces. It is a downhill process. This is true because it moves substances from high concentration towards low concentration, so it is a downhill process. It is uphill, wrong. A process by which only large molecule can move, false. All molecules can move, especially small size. Required energy, false. Depends on the balance between hydrostatic pressure and oncotic pressure, this also false. So the best answer is a downhill process. The primary force moving water across the cell membrane is active transport, facilitated diffusion, co-transport, osmotic force, antiport with hydrogen. Movement of water across the cell membrane is called osmosis. This is unique for the movement of water. Osmosis, what is its best definition? It is a movement of solvent across semi-permeable membrane where hydrostatic pressure is high to area where hydrostatic pressure is low. Movement of solute across semi-permeable membrane from area of high solute toward the area of low solute. Movement of solute through a semi-permeable membrane from area of low solute toward the area of high solute. Movement of solvent across a semi-permeable membrane from area of low solute toward the area of high solute. The simple diffusion of osmosis is the movement of water molecules from area of high water concentration toward this area of low water concentration. But for clinical purposes, we can simplify it and say movement of water from area of low solute concentration toward this area of a high solute concentration. Facilitated diffusion is characterized by all of the following except diffusion occur down concentration gradient, it need carrier, it is not rate limited, no external energy is needed. To remember, when you say facilitated diffusion, diffusion means that the substance moves from high concentration towards low concentration and no energy is needed. When you say facilitated, so it needs a carrier. When you say carrier, so it is rate limited and saturable. So the answer here is that it is not rate limited. Which of the following transport systems require energy? Diffusion, facilitated diffusion, active transport, and osmosis. As we know, diffusion, facilitated diffusion, and osmosis, they are passive transport mechanisms and not need energy. Active transport is the choice. Which of the following is not a character of secondary active transport? Occurs against electrochemical gradient, needs energy, need carrier, rate limited, transport to only one substance at a time. As we know, secondary active transport occurs against electrochemical gradient because it is active transport. Of course, it needs energy and need carrier, and it is rate limited and saturable. However, the fifth choice transports one substance at a time. This is false, because in secondary active transport we transport two substances, at least one of them is sodium. A non-carrier mediated transport down concentration gradient is called facilitated diffusion, simple diffusion, active transport, or osmosis. The best choice is simple diffusion, transport of substances according to electrochemical gradient from high concentration to low concentration without need for carrier, simple diffusion. Which of the following is true about simple diffusion? It is rate limited, not need carrier, it is saturable, it is active. The direct answer is that it does not need carrier. If it needs carrier, it will be named facilitated diffusion. Which of the following is not a character of active transport? It occurs against electrochemical gradient, it needs energy, it needs carrier, it is rate limited, it is not saturable. As we know, any type of active transport, it is active, so it occurs against gradient and need energy and need carrier, and it is rate limited and saturable. So the answer of this question is E. Which of the following is not true about operation of the sodium potassium pump? As we know, the operation of the pump consists of 6 steps. First, 3 sodium bind toward the inside. Second, the alpha subunit becomes phosphorylated and activated. Third, 3 sodium are expelled outside. The fourth is binding of the 2 potassium to their side. The fifth is dephosphorylation of the alpha subunit, and the last step is release of potassium to the inside of the cell. So which of these steps is wrong? 3 sodium bind to the alpha subunit, this is correct. Conformational change of alpha subunit and transport sodium, this is also correct. 2 potassium bind to the alpha subunit, this is correct. Alpha subunit become phosphorylated again when potassium bind, false. When potassium binds, it becomes dephosphorylated. Transport of potassium to the inside, so the answer is D. Sodium potassium pump is activated by all of the following except high intracellular sodium, high extracellular potassium, availability of ATP, cardiac glycoside, and thyroxine. Increase of the intracellular sodium or extracellular potassium urges the pump to work and to achieve its goals of maintaining low intracellular sodium and low extracellular potassium. ATP energizes the pump. Thyroxine does the same. However, cardiac glycosides inhibit the pump. Which of the following statements about membrane transport is true? Diffusion occurs against concentration gradient. Facilitated diffusion doesn't need carrier protein. Vesicular transport involve chemical transmitter release. Active transport occur according to a concentration gradient. Which of these is true? Diffusion against the gradient, false. Facilitated diffusion does not need carrier, false. Active transport according to gradient, false. Vesicular transport involves chemical transmitter release, this is correct. This is the right answer. Active transport is characterized by against the concentration gradient, does not need carrier, not rate limited, not saturable. The first choice is the correct answer. Which of the following is inhibitor of sodium potassium pump? Aldosterone, insulin, high intracellular sodium, dopamine. The inhibitor of the pump is the last one because the first 3 are activators. An example of secondary active antiport. So substances are transported in different directions. Sodium glucose transporter, sodium potassium pump, sodium calcium transporter, sodium chloride transporter. Of course, the correct answer is C. Thank you and see you again in next videos.